This sub-lesson is going to touch on some basic points to keep in mind related to literacy. A future course will go deeper into all things reading and writing, so stay tuned. First of all, many parents have questions about the link between DLD and dyslexia. To be honest, the dyslexia label has generated a fair amount of confusion. There actually is no firm consensus on what constitutes dyslexia, but most would agree that it is characterized by significant difficulties with word reading, also known as decoding, and with spelling, also known as encoding. You will probably encounter the word decoding a lot. So again, decoding is a word used to describe the process of sounding words out so they eventually become sight words, or translating the letters on the page into an identifiable word. Encoding, also known as spelling, means using letters, that is the code, to convey desired meaning by writing down sounds to represent words. A great article published by the American Speech and Hearing Association titled "Understanding Dyslexia in the Context of Developmental Language Disorders" is a treasure trove of information if you want to read further. The link is included in the slides, and I encourage you to check out this article. As the article states, dyslexia and DLD are distinct, but often co-occurring disorders. There are clear parallels between dyslexia and DLD. They both involve a deficit that is unexpected given the absence of intellectual disabilities, perceptual deficits such as not being able to see or hear properly, or other medical explanations for the observed deficits. In other words, there's no clear reason why we would expect the child to have DLD or dyslexia because they can see, hear, and have adequate intelligence and so on. Second, to be diagnosed with both DLD and dyslexia, there has to have been adequate environmental stimulation, meaning the child can't struggle to read or use oral language because they've rarely been spoken to or have barely any experience with books or the concept of reading. We don't know exactly how many students have both DLD and dyslexia because of that lack of consensus on the criteria needed to diagnose dyslexia. However, it's likely that at least half of the children with dyslexia will also have DLD. Research also suggests that at least half of children with DLD also have dyslexia. There are some students with DLD who are able to decode, that is, read or translate the letters on the page into the correct words at an expected level. But this does not mean they don't have any challenges with reading comprehension. I have family members, for example, who can read French aloud, often with intelligible pronunciation, as they know some basic rules regarding French word reading, but they actually don't understand a fair amount of what they have read due to significant deficits in their understanding of French grammar and French vocabulary. So we can see it takes more than just decoding words to be a good reader. We also need to understand the words and the grammar in order to achieve any functional benefit from the reading. If we don't understand what we've read due to language deficits, that is going to hinder us on our educational journey. Similarly, being able to spell words in French is also not going to help us much if we can't think of the words we need to convey certain information, and we don't know how to put those words together to make clear sentences, or if we can only make very basic types of sentences. Being a good reader and a good writer involves more than simply decoding or spelling words on a page. When we consider reading and writing in the context of DLD, we need to also be thinking about challenges in the areas of vocabulary, complex grammar, inferencing, narrative skills, and so on. In the very early grades, children are expected to learn to read. But quite quickly, expectations change from learning to read to reading to learn. If your child with DLD is struggling with decoding, maybe due to co-occurring dyslexia, so much of their energy is placed into figuring out what the words are, that by the time they get to the end of the sentence or the end of the paragraph, they haven't really internalized very much of the content of what they've read. Also, some of the words they may have decoded or read incorrectly. So they got incorrect information and they didn't have much energy left over to retain a lot of what they did read correctly. When we factor this in, along with other language challenges such as vocabulary and grammar deficits, we can see the distinct disadvantage for our kids with DLD. When children are expected to learn via reading, and reading is hard for them, they may not learn nearly as much as other kids learn using this modality. Also, when children have executive function skills that are not well developed, they may struggle to monitor themselves and or self-correct. Similarly, when a child is asked to write down what they know, even when we don't factor in issues with word finding difficulty, weak vocabulary, immature grammar, and so on, it can still take so much energy and effort to try to figure out how to encode, or that is spell, the words that they want to write. When you are exerting so much effort just to think of how to spell most of the words in your sentence, plus you also potentially have challenges with pencil grasp and fine motor skills, you're likely going to write less and have much less attention and effort placed on using complex sentences and more advanced vocabulary. So, on written tests, assignments, even journal entries, a child with DLD may not show the true extent of what they know, because it's just so hard to get words onto the page. This could be partly because of spelling challenges, and partly because of deficits in other areas of language that impact writing in a child with DLD, as well as those weak executive function skills we talked about. Even if a child happens to be a good speller, a weak foundation in oral language results in weaker written language skills as well. All this being said, I need to reiterate that there is so much hope. There's so much technology that can be used to bypass some of the decoding and spelling challenges, and there are also so many visual supports that can be provided for your child with other areas of language as well. We can also do so much through reflexive questioning as we help our children improve their executive function skills. My hope is that by engaging with these topics, you now have a better understanding of where the struggle originates, so you will be able to better understand how to effectively support your child.